Shocking breaking news. President of El Salvador has announced that he's willing to accept deportees of any nationality to be housed in the country's prisons, including American citizens and lawful permanent residents. Marco Rubio announced that the president of El Salvador has agreed to the most unprecedented, extraordinary migratory agreement anywhere in the world. He said that they can send immigrants detained in U.S. jails to El Salvador, and that El Salvador has offered to do the same for dangerous criminals currently in custody and serving their sentences in the United States, even though they're U.S. citizens or legal residents. But what's even more wild is that the U.S. would pay El Salvador to do this. President Bukele confirmed on X that El Salvador has offered the United States of America the opportunity to outsource part of its prison system, that his country would accept convicted criminals and charge a fee that would be relatively low for the U.S., but significant for us, making our entire prison system sustainable. So the U.S. is basically going to pay a foreign government to take its own prisoners. But where would that money come from? Taxpayer dollars? Will Congress have to approve this? And how much are they even talking about? Let's talk about why this is legally and financially insane. First of all, the Eighth Amendment bans cruel and unusual punishment. Courts have ruled that exile or forcibly removing a U.S. citizen out of their country falls under this. The U.S. cannot just banish people as a form of punishment. And this is something that's actually been decided by the Supreme Court. Not to mention that deporting U.S. citizens and permanent residents would absolutely be a violation of due process under the 5th and 14th Amendment. There are constitutional protections in place, and courts have ruled that removal from the U.S. have to follow a strict procedure. There's also some implications here about punishment that's imposed after sentencing. The U.S. government doesn't allow this. So there's a big question here. Would prisoners get a choice? They get to go to trial to determine if they're exiled, especially to a country with a brutal prison system. All of this definitely is a major due process violation. And with permanent residents, green card holders, yes, they aren't citizens, but they still have constitutional protections and legal rights. Deportation is already a serious penalty, but sending a green card holder to a country that's not their own, where they have no legal standing, that's next level human rights abuse. El Salvador's prisons are among the harshest in the world. There's overcrowding that has caused a serious threat to the lives of prisoners. In many facilities, provisions for sanitation, water, ventilation, temperature control, and lighting are inadequate or non-existent. And Marco Rubio, who's heading this potential deal and who's head of the State Department, is the head of the very same U.S. State Department that warns against prison conditions in El Salvador. The U.S. State Department, in its human rights report, confirms that there's torture and abuse of prisoners on behalf of prison guards. They've acknowledged the gross overcrowding, the inadequate sanitary conditions, the insufficient food and water shortages, as well as abusive physical conditions within the prison. So why is the U.S. considering sending its own people there? Imagine if another country tried to send its prisoners here. So there's really a slippery slope here. Who's next? And back to the money, who benefits? El Salvador. Bukele said that this would make their prison system sustainable. It doesn't help U.S. taxpayers, because if the U.S. is paying for this, then we are paying for this. So here's the bottom line. The U.S. cannot deport its own citizens. It's unconstitutional. The legal and human rights and moral implications are staggering. The fact that another country is going to profit off of something so illegal is shocking. For now, the U.S. hasn't formally agreed to this, but the fact that it's even being discussed is insane. I'd love to hear your thoughts, so drop them in the comments. And follow us for more immigration news and information.